Hey guys, hope everyone had a good summer. Right now where we're at, the coaching staff, we're in here on the 19th, really getting back together and just starting getting used to being in the stadium as a crew. We've got the players in, a short time after when you guys all saw in the media when it was released. With our early entry group right now, it's rookies, quarterbacks, first-year players, and a few guys that were injured last year going through the off-season. So right now, we've got a few more days left. By the end of next week, we'll be able to get on the field with that early group. Our veteran group right now is finishing up their testing and quarantine period. They'll start their physicals tomorrow, and we'll see them in person on Monday. So it's a good point for us right now. We've had a good productive few days. It's almost been a little bit like a rookie mini camp for us in terms of the rookies getting on the field, getting them exposed to some of our new stuff for the first time in terms of being on the field, our strength and conditioning program, and getting some walkthrough time with them. It's been great with the vets, the quarterbacks, especially getting these guys on the field and be able to go through our systems with them. Been a productive couple of days so far. We've got another walkthrough tonight, and then tomorrow we got some strength condition programs. They'll have off on Sunday, and then Monday we'll pick it back up. So any question, anything we're doing, fire away.
Judy, you can go ahead with your question.
Thanks. Hi, Joe. I wanted to ask, I know it's early, but what have you seen about what kind of relationship, if any, Jason Garrett and Daniel have been able to develop over this very unusual offseason in these first few days?
I'll tell you what, it's still early, and these relationships are going to evolve over time. But I'd say for our entire coaching staff, and it was reflected obviously through Jason and Daniel as well as Jerry Shaplinski and Daniel, our coaches worked very hard and our players were very urgent to do what we're trying to do, and that was in a virtual program, knock down these walls. Look, we were given the opportunity to work together. Just like we are right now, we got to interact. The communication was the biggest part, talking about the introduction of our schemes and systems, laying out some of the groundwork for our culture. We're all looking forward to getting everybody in person, but you can tell that over time, the relationships obviously will, be like, we'll see more to it. But it's been very positive at this point with all the players and coaches.
I'm just curious with everything. I mean, with all the planning you put into how you thought this was going to take place, what has been the biggest challenge for you as a coach? And have you gotten a chance to be a coach, or do you almost feel like you're kind of still coordinating everything and not really coaching football?
Well, look, I'll be very honest with you. The other day was the first time I've been in a walkthrough where instead of being directly related to a specific group or running a period at a time, you're walking around observing everything. By the time we got to our second walkthrough, look, my natural tendency is to be very hands-on, so I find my way to groups, and I know what I want to get across to different players. There's definitely a lot of coordination that goes on, Art. The planning's huge, but really ultimately our job as a coaching staff and my job is make sure that we're in a position to adjust accordingly and keep moving. And that's what I've seen right now from our coaches and players. We've got an attitude to figure it out. And right now everyone's figuring it out. Whatever we're allowed to work with, we're going to figure it out. We've got a plan day by day. As that plan changes, we adjust, and we keep going full speed.
Thanks.
You can go ahead with your question.
Thanks. Joe, we've seen, other sports try and launch here in this COVID atmosphere. Obviously, hockey and basketball seem to be doing okay in a pretty tight bubble. Baseball's having some struggles without sort of that bubble. What have you told the players that they need to do and that they need to be aware of to make this football season work, not just for the Giants, but really for the whole NFL?
Well, the first thing we have to all understand is everyone at this level is sacrificed to get here. We're going to have to make some more sacrifice, whether that's, socially away from the game, whether that's how we interact with, friends and family members throughout this season. But we have to make the right decisions. And the biggest thing is everybody has to understand that all of our decisions directly impact each other. It's not fair for me to go out and do something and put myself at risk and come in here and get a player sick. It's not my right. I'm not entitled to do that. So we've got to all make the right decisions, both in the building, following the protocols, and away from the building. And I think ultimately as a league, we just have to trust the plan in place the league's put. Make sure we adhere to the protocols. Make sure we wear the PPEs. Let's be careful. Let's be cautious. Okay, but we can operate aggressively if we just follow the plan in place.
Zach, you can go ahead with your question.
Hey, Joe, how's it going?
Hey, Zach.
Yeah, I was curious if you guys, the coaching staff, have talked about in the scenario that you were to test positive, or Jason or Patrick, like if you have like a succession plan and how you plan on like dealing with that, because I'm sure you have to plan for all scenarios this year.
We absolutely have. We have succession plans for the coaching staff. Once we get a depth chart in place at the end of the, roster development, we'll have plans for every player on the team and what the next man up would be. To be honest with you, my plan as a head coach as we go through training camp is not only evaluating the players, but evaluating the coaches in terms of interaction. And it's got to be the total chemistry of how a game day would operate. So there's going to be decisions that we'll make at the end in terms of going through the season. And those decisions may change as we go through the entirety of the season. But we'll structure practices accordingly. We're always in developing every player. We're in developing every coach as well. So we started talking back in the spring in terms of if any one coach, myself included, couldn't come to work that day for any period of time, how do we address meetings, practice on the field, the game? And we got to make sure we have a plan.
Bruce, you can go ahead with your question.
Hey, Joe, hope you and your family are well. Leadership is so vital during this COVID time, not only from the coach's standpoint, but from the players. Do you see players that are handling the leadership in this time period, adapting to protocols, and basically, even in a virtual fashion, showing you that this is going to work?
Our players are very committed to doing everything possible to make this work. Our team's committed to improving on and off the field on a daily basis. I'd say in the short time we've been with the players in our stadium as far as the protocols, they've done their absolute best. Obviously, when you first get in, there's some natural tendencies you're used to from being in a team environment that you have to start to distance yourself from, both physically, all right, and just hypothetically, having formed distance among players. So, the leadership aspect of it, I think we're going to see that emerge. We'll have a leadership council. We'll talk. Part of our culture is doing what's necessary to be successful. And at this time, to be successful, we have to stay healthy. The healthiest team has an advantage, and we're going to do our part to stay healthy.
Thank you, Coach.
Patty, you can go ahead with your question.
Thank you, Dan. Hi, Coach. How are you?
Good, Patty. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. 2 questions, if I may. Given the fact that there is no preseason games, do you have a plan in place regarding like a scrimmage or something where you can test out game day operations, which I imagine you're going to want to do? And then I'll just wait before I ask the second question.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got to do a good job of structuring training camp in that we're able to evaluate the players first and make sure we make the right decisions when we form this roster. And you can't do that without playing full-speed football. And you can't have a safe team who's ready to play on September 14th without having full-speed football. So whether it's a situation of inter-squad scrimmage, inter-squad games, we'll also develop the coaching staff as well through inter-practice communication. And then within the scrimmages and inter-squad games, we'll also divide the coach up and make sure the necessary communication takes place. And then going back to an earlier question, we'll make ways within scenarios of, within game communication, what if a certain coach isn't there? Practice those scenarios as well, so we have a plan in place.
And then my other question is, you have some players coming off injury. I don't believe you put anybody on PUP, but is everybody going to be able to go full speed? Evan Ingram, I think Corey Coleman, and then I think you had a couple of other guys, that had injuries that are coming off. And Marcus Golden, where do you stand with him? So
in terms of Marcus or any other player, there's an entry process everyone has to go through, the testing, the quarantine, and then the physicals. Once these players clear that process, Patty, I'll be happy to talk about all of them. To this moment, that's one player in particular who has not cleared the process. In terms of the question as far as being limited, I'm going to wait till all the players clear clear their physicals to give you an absolute answer on that. Remember, these are guys that we still have not seen physically for some time. They've been sitting in a hotel now for about a week, quarantining and testing. So I'm going to let Ronnie Barnes and the doctors do the physicals. We'll get all the necessary information. We'll see where we're at right there. But Evan's been working hard throughout the summer. He's been training and doing his rehab. We've had him out here with our group working and going, forward. We'll see where he is at physically as we ramp up the intensity and the volume, and we'll make our decisions from there.
Thank you.
Sure, you can go ahead with your question.
Hey, Joe, how you doing?
Hello, Paul. How you been?
Good, thanks. I'm sure not long after you got this job, you envisioned what it would be like to stand up in front of your whole team and address them as the first time as a head coach. Obviously, that has not happened yet. It will happen much differently when it does, because of all this situation. So can you are there a lot of players that you're literally meeting for the first time, face to face? And what do you envision? When do you envision the first time you get these guys all in a room together?
Well, in terms of our roster reduction, eventually we have to be at 80. That'll be the first time you actually get the entire team together at once. So that'll be the first time you get to talk to everyone at once collectively. To answer your question, no, we don't have any strangers. We've taken our time this spring to make sure everyone's gotten a chance to establish relationships with each other. It is the first time I'm physically seeing some of these players eye to eye. But the funny thing's been, even though we've been talking through the virtual world throughout spring, these young guys came in, these quarterbacks, first-year players, you just pick right back up where you left off. We were very thorough this spring and how we prepared and how we, launched into the program. This isn't going to be the first time I've addressed the team in terms of our culture or what we expect. So, at this point, we're really looking forward to getting a training camp and starting, football on the field.
Thank you.
Pat Leonard, you can go ahead with your question.
Hey, Joe, how you doing? I was curious, when David Sills goes on the COVID reserve list and a player is asymptomatic like that, can you just describe how that response went, if you were pleased with how the club and the organization responded, if, to your knowledge, anyone else has caught it or tested positive since? Do you feel comfortable with how you handled that first positive test?
Look, I have a lot of confidence in the way that our medical team has set up these protocols and how they're handling everything going forward. And I think our players will as well. We're taking every possible step to make sure our players can come into work every day and focus on football by knowing they're safe if they follow the protocols and the plan we have in place. The biggest thing for us is any player who can't be with the team on a daily basis due to any kind of illness is, we can extend the meetings through Zoom like we did in the spring. The one thing is it's not something foreign to our players now. They've already gone through an entire spring of it. So if they can't be in the meeting room with us, they can be in the hotel room with whatever their personal situation is and still participate in the meetings and not fall behind on the mental aspect of it that day.
Joe, hope you and the family are doing well. I know that it's an ongoing legal situation with DeAndre Baker, but now that he's on the commissioner exempt list, what's the thought process in terms of you guys keeping him around? And also as you start training camp, how's it going to look at the top of the depth chart at cornerback on the other side of James Bradbury?
Well, to address the first part of the question, he's not on our 90-man roster currently. He's on an exempt list, so I'll let the league deal with that issue. I'm not going to comment on any ongoing legal investigation. In terms of depth chart, the entire team, is really at the same point. Everyone has to come in and compete from ground zero and build their way up. Again, we've had very productive meetings in the spring. We haven't been on the field together yet, besides some walkthroughs of this early group. I mentioned earlier that's been more of almost a rookie mini camp type atmosphere of getting guys on the field, getting them acclimated to our systems, just getting used to being on the field with the coaches and players together for the first time. And it's new for all of us right now. It's a new staff. It's the first time we're being together on the field together, first time being with our players together. So these are things that we've been able to take this early reporting opportunity to iron out some details and get on the same page.
Thanks.
Jordan, you can go ahead with your question.
How's it going, Joe?
Hey, Jordan.
I was just curious, how are you approaching me? This obviously is not a normal season. Do you have to prepare differently for other things that may pop up along the way? And how do you go about doing that?
Well, it's different for every situation, Jordan. I think that, my job is to make sure that we're preparing for all the possible scenarios that could come up throughout the season. It's not only things we've thought of already, but things that pop up as we go of, okay, what if this happens? What's our plan in place? Now, you do that as a football team anyway. This year, you just take into a different account with, COVID and how that may affect, our team or other teams, as well. But the biggest thing is just to talk about the situation. You talk out how you're going to handle it. A lot of it's personnel oriented. A lot of it may be preparation based on meetings, how we had to do the spring virtually. Practice, how will that look? Right now, we have all plans for practice to look as normal as can be. If that changes at some point in the league, we'll figure it out. We'll adjust and we'll keep on moving. You know, we're just not going to make any excuses for anything that comes up this season. You know, we're all here to play and coach football. We're here to do it well, and we're going to put everything into it.
So you don't believe in the idea that, you know, it's going to be such a wild season and who knows how it unfolds, that, you know, you might get a pass in public perception of saying, oh, this was just such an outrageous season. He did the best he could, kind of deal.
There's unknowns in every season going in. This year is no different, just has a different element that we haven't dealt with before. So as we go, you know, we'll see how things change and things shake out. But, you know, right now we're looking to go ahead and make sure we build the strongest team we can.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Rob.
Ali, you can go ahead with your question.
Hey, Joe. Obviously, with Nate Solder, the most important thing is his family, and we read your comments about that. But if I could address it from a football standpoint, you obviously lose your most experienced tackle. Dave's been trying to build this offensive line to a strong point for 3 years. From a football standpoint, how secure are you with your offensive line, your tackles without Nate? And from a salary cap standpoint, that opened up a lot of money under these rules. Do you expect to be active in free agency this summer?
You know, we'll always make the best decision, all right, for the team. We don't feel right now like we have money burning a hole in our pocket. We just know there's a little bit more on the cap space for us right now. Listen, we fully support Nate Solder's decision. I've known him personally going back to my time in New England. Not only known him, but had a relationship with him, his family, his wife Lexi's an absolutely great woman. You know, their children and what they're going through personally. Yeah, this is not an easy decision. I don't want to talk for Nate. He's put out his own words. But from an organizational standpoint, you know, we wanted Nate to play this year. But we fully support his decision not to, because we absolutely understand what he's going through. This was not an easy decision for him. We talked about it a lot. And, you know, at the end of the day, I'm not going to try to talk any player into doing anything, all right, when it comes to, you know, the situation we're in right now. You've got to make decisions best for you personally and your family. I think Nate did that, and, you know, we fully support him. You know, from a football standpoint, listen, we have confidence in all of our players. You know, again, we still have to get on the field and practice and evaluate. And that's at all positions. You know, whether it's the offensive line, the skill positions, defense, whatever it ends up being, we've got to see how these guys perform under pressure and can handle the loads of install, all right, and see how they perform when they're tired and in direct competition. There's a lot of things that have to be done in a short period of time. We've got to make good evaluations as coaches. I've got a set of practices to make sure we can evaluate guys at multiple positions, all right? And we've got to make sure that we just do a good job of seeing what every player does when he understands what to do and can play as fast as. And that's our job as coaches to teach him.
Duggan, you can go ahead with your question.
Hey, Joe, real quick, just to follow up on that, has any other player indicated a plan to opt out?
At this moment, no.
Okay. And then just as far as the decision with Aldrick Rosas, could you explain what went into that and then why Chandler was the best option to take his spot?
You know, in terms of the, you know, who may be coming in, again, I'll be glad to talk about them when they complete the entry process and procedure coming in. You know, I just say on the decision to release Aldrick, you know, we felt that, you know, it was best for the team based on, you know, all things being put in together, what we're trying to do going forward. I like Aldrick a lot as a person. You know, I wish him the best of luck. I'm not going to comment on any ongoing legal investigation, but we made a decision we thought was best for the team.
So you spoke a lot about versatility when you got hired and kind of leading up to the draft. I was wondering how big of a role that played with the selection of Xavier McKinney, and how do you see him fitting into the Giants secondary? And also, as a second question, how optimistic are you that we can play a full 16-game season?
Listen, I got a lot of trust in the plan put forth by the league. We've spent a lot of time on this. You know, when these players left, or, you know, we signed off, you could say, for vacation, and the coaches, we took a little bit of a break for about a month. It was 24/7 around the clock, really working on making sure we got the facilities in order that we can bring our players in and have them work safely. You know, we're doing everything we can to be, you know, not just compliant, but make sure that we're staying ahead of issues that may arise. We're trying to educate our players on a daily basis. We've got to enforce the rules as coaches. We have to rely on the leadership of the team to build a culture in the locker room. Okay. But in terms of, you know, the optimism for a season right now, look, we got 16 games on the schedule, and I'm looking forward to playing every one. All right. To answer the other question about X, you know, listen, versatility is a huge part of all of our systems, offense, defense, and the kicking game. All right. Our defense is going to be multiple. That's both by base scheme. It's also going to be based by game plan, who the opponent is. You're going to see anywhere from 4 to 6 DBs on the field at certain times. His role will be different based on different game plans. And really, he'll have a chance, like all of our other players will, to establish what he's going to be within our defense based on how he performs over this next month of football.
Ralph, you can go ahead with your question.
Hey, Joe. Hope you're doing well. I know that the depth chart is obviously still a work in progress, but with Nate Solder gone for the year, just based on who you have, it's clear that some very young players, some rookies, are going to have to fill a significant role. Normally, by now, you'd have seen them on the field, tested them a little bit. How concerned are you in general about using rookies and young players in key spots anywhere this season when, things are so unusual?
The age of a player doesn't really ever bother me, okay? We bring guys into play. This isn't like college, bring a young guy in, and the NFL doesn't give you a red shirt year. You get 53 to 54 guys in your roster, all right, based on the number of offensive line to keep, but you get a limited roster. Everyone's got to contribute. Everyone has to play. One thing you hear a lot about is people get caught up with the word starters. You can only bring so many to an active game day list. Everybody plays. It's not really significant who the first 11 to go on the field are, because at the end of the game, everybody has a role. Everybody has a very important job, and everyone has to contribute. We're going to play all of our offensive linemen in multiple positions, both right and left. We're going to have a competition for every position. You're going to see multiple guys that are going to be playing both inside at center and outside at tackle. We're going to play all of our tackles in both right and left to start camp and see who fits best where. And once we establish that point that we've shaken out who should be on either side, we'll go forward with it. Now, that being said, we want to cross-train all of our players. Okay, you can't just play right tackle or left tackle or right corner or left corner. Based on depth and health of the team, it may require you in the middle of the game or for an entire game based on a depth chart to play on a side you don't normally play on. So all of our guys have to be ready at all times to switch sides, to mirror their technique, and to play effectively for a game.
Rock, you can go ahead with your question.
Thanks. Joe, do you expect there to be less movement at the bottom of the roster than there might normally be during a training camp, just because if you claim a guy off of waivers or sign a free agent, you're not going to have him on the field for almost a full week?
Tom, that's one thing we have talked about. This may be a different training camp around the league in terms of the time with the claims. Now, that's not going to eliminate roster movement. It's still the National Football League, and people are going to look to fill their needs, or possibly improve their depth, as they see guys on the waiver wire. The one thing I think you have to be, conscious about as a coach, that if you have to move somebody off the roster to claim somebody, you've got to have a plan in place for that week or so that you're going to be at, you're at 80, but you're really at 79 on the field, if that makes sense.
And I would think that would become an even more pressing issue once the regular season does start, where, normally you would claim a guy, he would come in on a Tuesday. He probably wouldn't even be available to you on that Sunday's game.
You're absolutely right on that, Tom. I think that's part of the discussions we've had. The claiming process, we don't have a definite answer as far as how the regular season is going to go. But at this point, we're kind of assuming it's going to be very similar to what we're looking at right now with the testing and quarantine piece. I think what you said is very fair and very true. This is no longer you work a guy out on Tuesday night, he's doing meetings. Wednesday, he's in practice with the rest of the team. It's important for us to establish our on-the-roster depth. And the practice squad, with the ability the league's had for us to flex players up and down and the amount of veterans we can keep to that practice squad roster, that's going to be key in all teams and how they manage those 16 positions this year going forward.
Hi, Joe. How you doing?
Good. How you doing?
Good. I know players are in a hotel now and they're quarantined. As the season comes up, how are you going to handle them when they go home? I mean, is there some rules that you're going to put into effect to limit their access when they're home?
Well, the league's already put out some rules already through the agreement in terms of where they can or can't go exposed to large crowds in certain atmospheres. But the thing I want to emphasize with my team is we have to make responsible decisions, all of us. And what I've got to think personally about is it's not just where I go. I know where I'm at the stadium or driving my house, but I've got to be conscious of where my wife and children are. Who are they around on a daily basis? What am I bringing back to the team? Listen, there's some sacrifices we have to make, but like I said earlier, everybody's made sacrifices to get to this level, okay? If the biggest thing we have to do is for half a year, all right, wear masks around each other, distance a little bit, and when we go home, be home. I think that's a pretty fair trade-off to be able to be part of the National Football League.
Thank you.
All right, Leonard, you can go ahead.
Hey, Joe, I don't think you've addressed this yet, but how did you decide how to split up your 90-man roster for camp? And then also, I know some teams are doing like the quarterback thing, like first string and third string together, second and fourth. Is that something you're doing as well with position groups, but especially quarterback?
Well, the league really established how we had to split the roster, Pat. You've got to go rookies and first-year players, and then the vets another group. What you had flexibility on was injured players and quarterbacks. We felt it was most beneficial for us right now with the group size of who came in to just keep all the quarterbacks in this first group. So as we progress and have time to get on the field and, quote, phase 2 type activities, all right, come up this next Friday, that we can have the quarterbacks out there and start to work with them on the field. The biggest thing we're thinking about right now at this point is physically to give our players a chance to get their bodies ready for practice. And that's why the league set this up. That's why the players and coaches were very adamant about having a training period for the players. We've got to remember, these guys can't go from 0 to 100. Okay, you have to give them a chance to train, to get their bodies in position and ready. All right, they have to go out there without having to face an offense or a defense player across from them and just have football movements. Okay, there's things that when you train on your own, you just can't simulate. And it's really the reactive movements that you're so vulnerable to. So, to avoid soft tissue injuries or, ligament issues, we want to make sure that we take our time in this front part of this acclimation and give the players the full progression of lifting, running, walkthroughs, eventually getting to phase 2 activities, non-padded practices, eventually lead to padded practices and true training camp. So, for us, it was just important to get the quarterbacks in that first group so we could start their clock right away and get them on the field and keep them healthy.
If I understand the rules correctly, I think you're getting 14 practices, and I think of the 14, I think it's something like 10 are padded, which doesn't sound like a whole lot. With that said, how much in terms of your evaluation of the players is going to be swung more towards the mental side, towards understanding what the coaches are asking in the scheme of their specific roles, and does it, I guess, change how you're going to evaluate as you go along later into the summer?
It's kind of funny when you think about the way it was set up, and we talk to a lot of the coaches on the staff, you kind of have to reach back to some of your previous experience. This is almost a little bit more like a college training camp because you're not worried about getting ready for a preseason game. You're not concerned about having a plan in place for a specific opponent. You really have more time to work on your own installs and what you can address, within your own team at your own progression. So obviously the number of coaches on our staff, myself included, who have been through college football, we kind of thought back into how you could have this progression. For us, there's really kind of waves of training camp. And while we're allowed to have walkthroughs on the field, okay, we're going to really emphasize a lot of the mental part of it, Patty, and really bring these guys around within the systems and give them the opportunity to really learn this at a good learning and teaching pace. And then when we get the opportunity to get on the field, we have to ramp it up. It's not ramping it up necessarily just to say, okay, they gave us a green light, step on the gas. But you've got to get the players' bodies ready for competition. Each part of the season gets faster. Preseason is not as fast as the regular season. The regular season is not as fast as the playoffs. And every round you go in the playoffs, it gets faster and more intense. That's just the truth. Not that players aren't putting out max effort. It's just the reality of the situation of how the teams get better as you go, all right, the reaction you have to have, and just the intensity of the game. We've got to do our part as coaches of ramping up the practices in training camp so that when we get to the regular season, our guys are physically prepared to play safely on the field.
Thank you.
This will be the last question. Lombardo, you can go ahead.
Hey, Joe, I know some teams have kind of talked about, and there's been speculation about teams quarantining their quarterback, whether it would be just Daniel by himself or quarantining a backup quarterback. Is that something that you considered or maybe already putting into action?
We're trying to keep all the players spaced out physically, to be honest with you. In terms of just quarantining any one player at this moment, no, we want to have every player around here so that we can have, interpersonal connection with them, get them on the field and train them. Are you referring to more in the regular season or?
Yeah, that and maybe just like keeping those guys like did during the regular season or just away from the building, like separate protocols for your quarterbacks just to keep those guys a little bit extra safe.
You know, I think we're doing everything right now we possibly can to keep all of our guys extra safe, to be honest with you. You know, our guys know they go back to the hotel. I mean, they're in their room. We keep them here late enough anyway. They don't have a ton of time once they leave the building. You know, normally they get back, they read their notebook, their head hits the pillow, and they're out and they start the day over again. But we're just making sure all of our players, not any one specific, but all of our players, you know, keep spacing, follow the protocols. We put a lot of work into that. It's just part of the understanding of what we're dealing with, you know, and we can't make this the biggest obstacle. We're going to have 16 games of opponents. All right. They're going to be a lot tougher than just following protocols. So, you know, we just have to get ready right now, just follow all the little detailed steps along the way, get ready for the season.